We've been keeping bees for over 9 years. We have 5 different apiaries and about 50 hives on average per year that we manage. We love to teach beekeeping classes, and we especially love to help people in the East Texas area figure out how to be the best beekeepers they can be. So beekeeping is a lot more than just having bees and putting them in the yard. There's a lot of management that's involved as a beekeeper. And so today I thought we would talk about the 3 bees in the hive. This is a part of the class that we give first when we're teaching our beekeeping classes. We just kind of run through what the 3 bees are, and then talk a little bit about the differences between each of them and what their roles are. So we'll start with the queen. Each colony should only have 1 queen. Now there are times when you're going to have a queen in the colony and then you'll have queen cells, but for the most part, walking around on the frames in a hive, you're only going to have 1 queen. What is her job? Her job is to lay all the eggs. That is really her job. That's it. She doesn't feed herself. She doesn't take care of herself. She kind of gets to decide whether she's going to lay a fertilized egg or an unfertilized egg. But other than that, the worker bees decide everything for her. So I'll do another video in the future that goes into more detail on the queen, because there's a lot of different facets to understanding what's going on with the queen to be a really good beekeeper. But for now, we're just talking about the general parts of, general roles and general identities of the 3 bees. So first one is the queen. She is a fertilized female, okay? And she has a fully developing reproductive system. She's the only one in the hive that has a fully developed reproductive system. Okay, so 1 queen. Then you have drones. The drones are the male bees. They come from an unfertilized egg from the queen. So she will lay this in typically larger cells than traditional. The drones are a larger bee. They develop longer than all the other bees. And so they need a little bit more space. So as the workers are moving her around, they might take her to an area that they want her to lay drones in. Might be a little bit a different area. I would say in particular, they really like to lay drone eggs in the burr comb. So burr comb is just comb that is where you don't want it. Okay, so it could be in between frames, it could be at the top of your hive. Maybe you took a frame of honey out and you didn't put a spacer in there, like an empty frame. When you come back, it's full of burr comb. It's just comb that's where you don't want it. Okay, so anyway, an unfertilized egg results in a drone, and that's your male bees. Their purpose in life is only to fertilize the queen. So from the time that they are hatched until they die, their goal is to fertilize a queen, and upon fertilizing that queen, they actually die. Part of their intestines are pulled out when they finish the fertilization process, and they sadly fall to the ground and die. If they don't get the opportunity to fertilize a queen, then in the fall, the worker bees will chew their wings off and kick them out of the hive, because they bring no actual benefit to the colony. That means that they're not cleaning out cells, they're not feeding baby bees, they're not protecting the hive, guarding the entrance, those kind of things. And so taking them into the winter where they're just going to consume resources is at an expense for the hive. And so they have no purpose for having drones in the hive through the fall, winter, and even early spring. Now, when we see the drone cells, we can either see the drone cells in the hive when we're inspecting in like late January, early February. We might see that, or we might see actual drones. And those are usually an indication that the colony is very confident in what they're seeing, what they're bringing in. They're bringing in a lot of pollen. Maybe they're starting to bring in little pieces of nectar here and there. And so when you see that the colony is making drones, 2 things. 1, it's just a happy colony and they're ready for spring. Or 2, the queen was not properly fertilized and that's all she can lay. So those are some things you need to consider. If you're seeing drones, say in November, December, you probably have a problem in your hive. But if you're seeing drones in February and that's all you're seeing, you have a problem in your hive. But if you're seeing a few drones here and there in late January, early February, but lots of workers hatching out, then you know the colony is just a happy colony that's expecting really good stuff to come. Okay, so this takes us to the third bee. So the third bee is probably the most important bee in the hive, and that's the worker bee. That's all of your females, and they are from a fertilized egg, but they do not have a fully developed reproductive system. So the workers hatch out. First thing that worker bee does is she cleans the cell that she came out of. She's going to immediately become a nurse bee, basically, but also a cleaning bee. So they're going to be cleaning out the cells that are just hatched out of. They're going to be feeding the larvae and the eggs, taking care of all the babies that are being raised. They do that for about a week, and then they transition to becoming a receiving bee or a honeycomb making bee. So that's the second job that they hold. The first job, cleaning, taking care of the babies. Second job is making the honeycomb and being a receiving bee. So when the workers, the foragers, are bringing back resources, whether it's pollen or nectar or even water, they will get into the hive, hand it off to a receiving bee, and then go back out and get more. So this keeps things running really efficiently. And so there's a group of bees. Their second job that's all they do. They're just waiting to be receiving bees. They'll take the product, whatever it is, pollen, nectar, or water, from the forager that's bringing it back, and then it will go and take care of it. It'll go put it in a cell with other pollen, or it'll store it as nectar. The water they use for like cooling the hive. They kind of use it like a swamp cooler. So that's the second job. And then the third job is a guard bee. And the bees, there's several bees at the entrance of the hive, and they act as guard bees. They make sure that foreign bees do not come in and leave with any resources. So they allow bees to come in that don't belong to the colony, as long as they're not trying to leave with anything, if that makes sense. So there's times that maybe you move a hive from one place to another. If the foragers were out during that move, then when they come back, they're just gonna find another colony and they're just gonna kind of join it. Usually there's no fight. Usually everybody's peaceful about it. But the guard bees are the ones that are monitoring that. They're also making sure pests don't get in, like wasps or other flying insects that could cause problems once they're in the hive. Part of the job while you're a guard bee would also be to remove corpses. So this could be, maybe it's a larva that didn't develop properly, and so they have to go in, eat the capping off, and remove that larva. Sometimes some bees are hygienically more predisposed to detect mites, and so you'll see them opening up cells and pulling out a developing larva that has a lot of mites on it, and they're aware of the fact that they're breaking the mite cycle by doing this. And so some colonies are more likely to do it. Some colonies you may never see it. And the last job of the worker bees, the female, is a forager bee. So what this is this is the work group of the colony. They're going to be going out, bringing in your nectar, your pollen. They could be bringing water in. They are going out and coming back constantly during the sun, when the sun is up. They don't work as much on a foggy day or cloudy day, and they definitely don't work on a sunny day. But on a normal sunny day, rainy day. They don't work on a rainy day. On a normal sunny day, they will work from sun up to sundown. And this is really why the worker bees have such a short lifespan. They're going to live about 4 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 5 weeks at the most, during your March to September timeframe. Typical workers, they hatch, they live 30 days, 40 days, something like that, and then they fly until their wings fall off, just working themselves to death. Now, the worker bees that hatch out in the fall, in September and October, those bees, since they don't spend as much time foraging, it's not as hard on their body, they're going to actually live all the way through the winter and into early spring. So those little girls, those workers, the girls kind of have, I guess, the better life, if you will. They live a little bit longer and they don't work quite as hard. So those are the 3 bees in the hive. When you understand that, you can understand, you can identify some different issues, right? Like I told you with the drones, when you see drones, you know that a couple different options of things are going on. We like to see drones in the early spring. It's an indication usually that things are on track and the colony is feeling really good. The queen won't lay drone cells if she doesn't feel like there's enough resources to support it. So if she's laying them too early, it's an indication that there's a problem. Another issue is when I told you that the workers don't have a developed reproductive system. If a worker decides to start laying, which I'll talk about this more in depth with the queen lesson, if she starts to lay eggs, which sometimes they do if there's a problem with your queen, you will be able to identify this because you'll see multiple eggs in the same cell, or you'll see them on the side of the cell instead of the bottom of the cell. The queen's abdomen is much longer than the worker's abdomen, and so the queen is able to get it all the way down to the bottom, and she lays that egg at the very bottom of the cell in the middle, but a worker will lay it on the side because she can't get her abdomen all the way down into the bottom. So, but she can lay eggs. But like I said, without a fully developed reproductive system, she doesn't ever get fertilized. She doesn't get bred, and so she cannot lay a fertilized egg. She can only lay drones. But usually when she's laying drones on the side of the cells, they're not going to develop properly. And so you're just going to see it as an issue when you look in there and you see a crazy egg pattern. So that's our little quick lesson on the 3 bees in the hive. We talked about the one queen. She lays all the eggs. Her retinue or her workers attend her as far as feeding her, cleaning her, and moving her around and telling her where to go. Sometimes they even put her on a diet and decide that it's time for the colony to split, which would be a swarm. So that's the queen. The second bee that we talked about was the drone, and he comes from an unfertilized egg, and those are all the males in the hive, and their only purpose is to fertilize a queen. Once they fertilize a queen, which would not be a queen from their own colony, they would find queens. They hang out in what's called drone congregation areas. So when they're hanging out waiting for a virgin queen to show up, it would not be a queen from their own colony. It would be a queen from different colonies, ideally. So that's their purpose in life, and in the fall, they get their wings chewed off and kicked out of the hive. You might see a lot of dead bees on the outside of your hive in the late fall, and you know that that just means that they were done with the drones and they kicked them out. Typically, you won't see any queens hatching in the late fall and winter, so that's also why there's just no need for drones. The colony does not naturally reproduce in the fall and winter. They naturally reproduce in the spring. And then lastly, we talked about the worker bee. She starts out as a nurse bee, cleaning bee, then she turns into a receiving bee. She ends up, then the third job, she turns into a guard, or what do you call it? Like a cemetery bee, because they take out the dead larva, or they remove larvae that they know there's a problem with. And then lastly, she ends her life as the forager, flying back and forth, getting all the resources. So those are the 3 bees. I hope this helped you understand kind of the roles in the hive a little bit better. And by understanding this, it helps us to just be a better beekeeper. So thanks for tuning in, and please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know if there's any questions you have and anything that we can answer for you. Thanks, and happy beekeeping.